There are plenty of spooky stories about the forest, creepypastas told around campfires. Stories that warn you not to go into the woods at night because of the things that might be waiting there for you. But what if those stories could actually be true? What if there are some places in the forest where you're just not supposed to set foot? Hi everyone, I'm your host. And today we're going to look at a mysterious Alaskan Army incident. 1998. 6 men set out into the Alaskan wilderness. They were all experienced U.S. Army engineers who had been sent to investigate unusual seismic activity near an abandoned radar base from the Cold War known as SIDAR. They had been hearing strange sounds in the area, and they wanted to see if there was anything behind them. This was something they had dealt with before, so they felt prepared. The men set up camp near the old radar base and then began their investigation. They put up tents and spread out their equipment, which included audio recorders, magnetometers, and other technology to listen for and measure any magnetic disturbances. As they began their work, one of the men noticed something curious. He saw what looked like a fresh set of tire tracks leading away from the main gate and into the forest. He assumed these must have come from some kind of vehicle from the nearby town of Galena, so he didn't think much more about it. The first few days of the mission were uneventful. The men recorded nothing out of the ordinary, and so they began to pack up their things and prepare to head back to base. But before they did, they wanted to check out the mysterious tire tracks they had seen earlier. One of the men later recalled what he had seen. The tracks had appeared to be made by a large truck, but they were unlike any tracks he'd ever seen before. There were 66 sets of tracks, each spaced exactly 10 feet apart. But the most puzzling thing about them was that the tire treads themselves looked wrong. They didn't match any kind of vehicle that anyone could identify. One of the soldiers brought along a tape recorder and began speaking into it, describing what he was seeing. He said he couldn't believe what he was looking at. He described the track pattern as being very geometric and bizarre. Then he started to notice something else strange. He heard what sounded like a rhythmic hum coming from somewhere deep in the forest. At first he thought it might be a mechanical sound, something like a generator or a truck. But as he listened more closely, he realized it wasn't. He wrote in his report it wasn't any type of mechanical noise. It was like a low, constant hum produced by some unseen force. It's like the sound of a jet engine, but not the whine of a jet engine. He stopped recording for a moment, and then he started again. He said the hum was growing louder, and that the air itself seemed to be vibrating. Then suddenly, the tape recorder picked up a loud bang, followed by another, and then another. He stopped recording once more, and wrote down what he believed had happened. He thought a tree must have fallen over, although there was no wind at the time, and the trees showed no signs of falling over. As the bangs continued, he went to his tent to grab his camera to try to capture whatever it was that was happening on tape. When he opened the tent flap, he was met by a sight that caused him to drop the camera and run for cover, he later said. When I looked back at the tent, the zipper was open and all my clothing was gone. The sound continued for several hours after this, at which point the men packed up their things and headed to their vehicles. They got into their trucks and drove off, planning to return to base and report what had happened. But as they turned onto the main road leading out of the base, they saw something that made them stop in their tracks. The tires on both of their trucks were flat and shredded to pieces. They were forced to abandon their vehicles and spend the night in the forest, before they could be picked up and taken back to base. At some point during the night, someone or something came back to the trucks and slashed the tires even further. When they finally made it back to the base, they reported everything that had happened to their superiors. But the next morning, when a team was sent out to recover their equipment, it was nowhere to be found. Some of the electronics were later discovered, smashed and melted near the trucks, but the rest of their gear was never found. A search team was sent out to look for the men. They found the partially destroyed tents and the wrecked trucks, but there was no sign of the men anywhere. It was almost as if they had vanished into thin air. Eventually, the Army called off the search and declared the men missing in action. Then in 2003, a Freedom of Information Act request revealed the contents of a top-secret memo written by the Army about the incident. The memo contained information about a top-secret site known as Echo Deep. It said the men had been investigating anomalous seismic activity in the area and had reported hearing a rhythmic hum that was unmechanical in nature. It confirmed that their tents had been found torn apart and that their equipment had been smashed and melted. The memo also said that a similar incident had happened in the same place 3 years prior, But this time, it was much worse. This is what it said. On November 13, 1996, members of the Alaska National Guard were conducting scheduled training maneuvers in the general vicinity of site during the exercise. Soldiers heard a low humming sound of unknown origin. They checked their weapons and equipment and believed they might have been under attack. However, when they attempted to call their base, they lost radio communications. Fearing that they were being attacked and unable to contact their base, the soldiers panicked and ran for cover. The soldiers' movements were erratic and uncoordinated, and many suffered severe physical and psychological trauma as a result of the incident. One soldier removed all of his clothing and began running through the forest. Another soldier threw himself face down in the mud and rocks. Still others fell to their knees and began praying. An investigation into the incident revealed no evidence that the soldiers had been deliberately targeted or attacked by any hostile force. To this day, the circumstances surrounding the incident remain unknown and unexplained. The memo goes on to say that when they investigated the site, they found a number of disturbing things. There were large patches of scorched earth and strange patterns in the ice. There were also numerous craters, which looked as though they had been caused by explosions. It says that all of the soldiers involved in the incident have since left the military and have refused to speak publicly about what happened to them. The Army has done everything it can to cover up this incident too. It says that the memo was classified top secret and that no one is allowed to talk about it without special clearance. It also says that the site is still active and that no one is allowed to go near it. But why? Why would the Army go to such extreme lengths to cover up this incident? What could possibly be happening at Echo Deep that the public is not supposed to know about? Well, there are some theories. Some people believe that the soldiers were abducted by aliens, who used some kind of advanced technology to make their bodies vanish. Others believe that they were the victims of a government experiment that went wrong. And still others believe that they simply wandered into a part of the forest that they were unsupposed to, and stumbled upon something they were unsupposed to see. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is for sure. The Alaskan wilderness is a dangerous place, and there are some things that man is not supposed to know about. The cases of the men who went missing near site and the soldiers who lost their minds in the forest near Echo Deep are two of the most disturbing incidents that have ever happened in the Alaskan wilderness. And yet they are almost completely unknown outside of the military. The fact that the Army has done everything it can to cover up these incidents only adds to the mystery and intrigue surrounding them. What could possibly be happening at Echo Deep that the public is not supposed to know about? Could there be something dangerous lurking in the Alaskan wilderness that the government is trying to hide from us? Or are these simply cases of soldiers who got lost in the woods and lost their minds? What do you think happened to the soldiers? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.